So I've decided that I'm just going to have to accept that I am retired. You see, I didn't want to be retired. I know that's probably weird to the majority of folks out there at my age in their 60s, 70s, or even 50s that are retiring, because most people have been at a job for many years and they're planning their retirement and they can't wait to get out. But no, not me. I didn't want to be retired. I liked what I did. I wanted to keep doing it for a while, but that was out of my hands. So at 62, I lost my job. And like most people, I went looking for another job. And what I found was, well, nothing. I discovered that ageism was real. Started out in a little town and that didn't work out so well. Lived there as long as we could, and then we moved to a larger town with family because we didn't have any place to live. I was unemployed and we were living off of our savings. So we thought maybe opportunity. So we moved to a bigger town. It had just made things worse because the population where we are now is, I think the median age is like 31 years old. It's kind of hard for old folks to find jobs in job markets like that. So at 64, I took Social Security. Not because I wanted to, but because we had to. Our savings had run out. I was growing kind of depressed about because I couldn't find work. No one would hire me. The skill set I had was either outdated, or maybe it's just because I was old and all the hiring folks were in their 20s. I don't know. Well, I do know. When I was in my 20s, I would rather work with someone in their 20s than some old guy that was constantly telling me that I was probably doing things wrong. Not that I do that, at least not on purpose, but man, when you see when someone's screwing up, it's hard to not say anything. So at 64, I took Social Security, but I still didn't think of myself as retired. I kept looking for work. By then, I was down to the old fart jobs like, Walmart and Home Depot, and I even applied at a senior center. I did get a job there for a short period of about 2 weeks until I realized there's no way I could do what they were asking me to do. I'm not even sure why they hired me. Well, I am. I know why now, because they're so desperate for people, because in the time I was there in 2 weeks, they had 8 people quit. I think that was a good sign, so I left too. Anyway, not long after that, I've turned 65 and did the Medicare thing, which was helpful because when you're poor, you don't have much in the way of insurance. I mean, for a while, we were able to fall back on the state's plan, but that was kind of limited, and I don't know why, I just didn't feel right about it. And so we're still living with family 3 years later. We have a nice little room in the basement. We've sold everything that was in storage. We used to have a 3-bedroom home. Now we live in a 10 by 12 foot space. Most of what we kept is in totes under the bed. And it was a hard change. So I've come to that point where I just need to realize I am retired and I need to change my mindset. I know I'm probably in the minority. Most folks, when they retire, they're all excited about it. I watch their videos. They're all talking about their freedom and lack of stress. And I went through years of unemployment. Matter of fact, last year, if you asked me what I did, I would say that I was unemployed. I wouldn't say I was retired, when technically I was, according to the government and most folks. Coffee time. It's terrible coffee. Anyway, but it gives me a cup to hold while I talk to you, so, it gives me something to do. So now I'm retired. Well, I think I am. I got to figure this out still. Kind of reminds me of a story I want to share with you. Because when I pondered this story, it affected me. It was several years ago now. I was in Alaska, and we were renting a building from this guy named Mike for a business we had. Actually, it was a church. We'd planted a church there, and we rented this building from Mike. Now, Mike, he was at that time probably in his late 60s, lifelong Alaskan. This was in the little town of Wasilla. He had been born and raised there. So he had grown up there when it was just a dirt road that went through town, and There were just a few residents there. But what most folks didn't realize about old Mike was he was a multimillionaire just because he had hung on through the years more than anything else and made a lot of good decisions. He'd run a construction company and he owned lots of property, and we were in a commercial building from him. And old Mike, he wore these old flannel shirts he'd ripped the sleeves off of, and he had about 6 teeth left in his head, and I don't think any of them touched. And he smoked these really weird little brown cigarettes that he would buy by the case out of Mexico. Cigarettos or cigarettos, something like that. They look like little cigars. And he was an interesting guy, always good for a story. And I'm there with my nephew, who I think was 19 at the time. He was like in his first year of college, and he'd come up to Alaska with us to help get things going. And he knew that Mike was a storyteller, and whenever Mike would come around, he would ask him questions, and Mike would go off on a story. So that was always fun. Sometimes a little inconvenient, but this time it was fun. So we're standing there, and Mike's just puffing on his little cigarettos or whatever they are, and telling us about his mining claim and inviting us up in the mountains. And then my nephew had never been to Alaska. This was his first trip, so he was kind of intrigued by moose, because in this part of Alaska, in Wasilla, it's like moose were common. They were in your front yards in the morning, and you had to watch out for them on the streets all the time. And they're big. The first time you see a moose, you don't realize it's the size of a horse. Well, my nephew, he asked old Mike, he goes, "Mike, have you ever ridden a moose?" Now, he was serious when he asked this because he was young and ignorant. But Mike just took it in stride, and he kind of looked up in the air and took a big drag on his little cigaretto thing, and it was, "Well, there was this time when me and my sister, we were probably junior high age, and we decided we wanted to ride a moose. Now, there was this cow that came into the yard." A cow is a female moose, no horns. "This moose came into the yard, and we watched her, and we realized she went back the same way all the time into the woods. So we found her trail through the woods and decided we were going to set up a snare. We were going to catch this moose, and we were going to ride it." And then he takes another drag and, blows out his smoke, looks at the sky, and kind of shows us the gaps in his teeth, and he goes on. "So this moose came in the yard, and we saw her out there, so me and my sister, we went out in the woods, and we followed the trail. This moose had been taken and found a big birch tree that grew up next to the trail, and we climbed up that tree, and we fixed us up a lasso, and we hung it down there waiting for this moose. And we decided we were going to ride a moose that day." And he takes another drag. And then he just doesn't say anything. And my nephew goes, "Well, what happened next, Mike?" So we watched old Mike, and he just kind of looks up at the sky like he's thinking about what to say next. Takes another drag on his little cigaretto thing. And then he looks at us and goes, "To this day, I don't know why we just didn't let go of that damn rope." And then he turned and walked away, leaving us to our imagination, thinking of what it was like to watch two kids being dragged through the woods behind a really angry cow moose. Yeah. Well, that's been me the last couple of years. I just wouldn't let go of the rope. It was just dragging me through the woods, through all the discouragement of trying to find work when no one would hire me, and all that frustration of the Medicare thing. Man, they send you the book. Are we supposed to read that whole thing? I don't know. Anyway, that was me. I just wouldn't let go of the rope. And I was thinking, what was on the other end of that rope? Well, for me, it wasn't a moose. For me, it was identity. I mean, I had served in ministry for years, and that was kind of my identity. And I had worked and been the provider for my family. That was an identity. I had been the guy that was dependable, that always showed up on time and was there for everybody else. That was my identity. And I'd been separated from all that. And not really by choice, but by circumstance. So it made it even harder to let go of the rope. There was also just the comfort of schedule and not having to live in the random, which I seem to live in now because we don't live in our own home. We live in our adult children's home with our little grandkids, and We live on their schedule. So everything gets kind of random. We don't really have the control over our life that we thought we would. So yeah, being retired has not been what many people think of retirement as. It was an inconvenience at first. Yep. But I realized I just need to let go of the rope and be retired and be in the moment and go out and find new people that are like me, that are retired, that have the time to do things. I guess that's one of the things I've run into is at 65, which is my age, a lot of guys I meet, they're still working. They're not retired. So when you say, hey, you want to go out for coffee? And it has to be at like 5 o'clock in the morning because they go to work, or it has to be on a weekend or something. I'm thinking, man, I want to go out for coffee like at 9 or for brunch and sit in the sun on the side of the road at downtown at a coffee shop and just enjoy. But I've only found a couple of those guys. And one of them doesn't drink coffee, so that's kind of a bummer. But we go bowling instead. A lot of old people go bowling. Anyway, that's what I got. Folks, if you're in this case where maybe you didn't ask to be retired, but that's where you've ended up because of financial or circumstances or health. That's another issue that I had to deal with, is my body's changing and my health needs are different. So, yep. Put something in the comments. Let me know if there's more of me than what I thought, because when I watch YouTube videos, I don't see anyone talking about retirement with regret. They're all talking about it with excitement and joy and stuff. So, that's what I got today. A bad cup of coffee and a confession to people I don't know and can't see, but I know you're there because I'm looking at that little lens that says there's someone behind me. Folks, have a great day. I'll come back later with another video. It'll be about something weird too.